Well, the people still matter. So, getting to know your team and getting to know how they operate, what motivates them, excites them, because no matter what you're trying to do, you have to have folks that feel like they're a part of something, that you care about them, that they're being heard. And all of that is key, even from a selfish standpoint. To get things done and execute, you've got to have folks that are ready to be positive and communicate with each other and with you. Yeah, it's also a benefit that it's nice to just work with people you like and have positive communication, but it also is really effective in getting things done.
Hello and welcome to Multifamily Elevated. My name's Suzanne Hobson, and I am super excited to talk to you about vision, people, and execution, and how you can utilize this information to elevate you and your team and your experience in multifamily. Brought to you by the Multifamily Media Network, giving you the latest and greatest news and content across our multifamily sector. So let's jump in, enjoy this episode of Multifamily Elevated, and enjoy the climb. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Multifamily Elevated. We are very pleased sliding into the holiday week to be able to speak to a special guest all about scaling and also making the most of process and people. Topics we're very happy to talk about on this podcast in particular. And so I'd like to just jump in and, introduce our guest today, Kevin Weishaar. I want to welcome you to our podcast today. I can't wait to dig into how you do what you do. Welcome.
Appreciate it. Thanks. Great to be here.
Yeah. So I'd like to just ask you to tell us a little bit about how you got into what you're doing, because I know there's been a journey there. Maybe you can take us through how you got to be doing what you're doing now.
Absolutely. I always say in property management, you never, no little kid grows up and says, I want to be a property manager when I grow up, but we all kind of fall into it at some point and fall in love with it in different ways. So yeah, I was recruited by, some friends that I worked with at the bank actually. And it was one of those things where, if they were traveling around doing just about anything and everything, as a regional at different properties, and thought that sounded fun. And it's kind of tickled that, interest and need for me to be able to problem solve and learn different things. And yeah, it's been a great career.
Yeah. Yeah. And so what are you doing today?
So today I'm, wearing a number of hats as property managers do. So helping with consulting, implementations of different software, helping coach different executives at the leadership position, helping, peers and colleagues and in terms of organizing and scaling their groups and organizations and leading teams all at the same time. So it's been fun.
Yeah. And again, I can, that totally resonates with us here. There's a lot to do. And I think, the services that you're providing are very timely. I think they are always timely, but in particular now, I think our industry is up for some new challenges, which I know we're going to jump into here shortly. But I'd like to just maybe reference some of the things that you talk about and have you elaborate on those, if you would. And that it's really about that operational clarity that you talk about, and about being clear and consistent and, scalable operations. What the heck does that mean? I mean, what does that really mean?
Yeah, it's having a really clear vision, simplifying things to the level that you can, and being able to communicate it. So it's just funny. I was on a call last week where, working with some of the leaders consistently, and we had talked about with the director of that property management team of, stepping down and working with the next level. And it was like, we invited that senior leadership team to be a part of it, but at the same time, it was like, but you've heard my same thing over and over and over again. Because if you're consistent, you're saying the same things in terms of what the expectations are, then you can really count on, cuts down on the rumor mill of who said what and what the expectations are. And when, you have those core beliefs of the way you want things to operate and be, and you're communicating on a regular basis, and it's always the same, that everybody feels like, all right, we have, some grounding, we're speaking the same language, and everybody can operate off of that.
Yeah. And so do you help companies create that common language? Is that something that you work with them closely on?
Yeah, there is definitely, a need out there to overcomplicate things, either because you want to dot every I and cross every T from a liability standpoint, or from, just a cover all your bases standpoint, but really starting and keeping it simple and clear about what the expectations are from, a day-to-day basis or how we interact basis or the culture that you create. As long as those are a shared language, all the details can get worked out in, mentoring and training and those kind of things. But you've got to have that shared language for sure.
Yeah, and you just said something that I talk about all the time as well, and that's really the clarity and the simplicity of what we do and really breaking it down, which is I found is very difficult for companies and management teams. It's not an easy thing. Would you agree with that? Like making something simple, whether it's a process or whatever that is, do you find that people struggle with that?
Yeah, that's got to be the building block. Something clear, just even just pictures, whatever. Just all right. Here's where we start from. We can get into the details as we go along, and that's the thing is you can never predict. A typical property manager's day or any outcomes, but as long as you have just the basics as a starting point, the rest kind of figures itself out.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a challenge I think for the people that I talk with as well, just making it simple. And yeah, it's funny. Sort of an oxymoron.
Hmm.
So let's talk people and process, which is really one of my favorite topics. And you are doing this with technology as well, which is sort of the icing on the cake. And it's not an easy challenge for sure to merge those things and mesh those things in a way that's optimizing for a company. And do you find that people are doing it out of order? Like, I don't know. I see a lot of tech going in and not a lot of people focus and process focus first. Would you say that that's true, or what are you seeing out there when it relates to that?
Yeah, you're never going to be able to implement what you want, be able to, sign on for the new bells and whistles unless you have buy-in from, the team kind of bottom to top. So, both in the way that everybody's communicating the information up and down and just in the almost faith that, the path that we're taking to be able to implement that thing is going to be beneficial for everybody. So yeah, you've got to have everybody on board before you can even begin one of those endeavors for sure.
Yeah, and you've had to really realign people and process and technology at scale across both tech and HUD as well as market rate. Where do operators in your mind go wrong the most often? Like where are they having the most pain?
Well, so if you, same thing like we are just talking about with simplicity, if you dive in on all of the regulatory requirements of any of those programs, and then you get into each state and each city, and it doesn't get any simpler for those of us, that worked in the affordable space forever. It's every source of funding comes with its own set of special requirements and reporting and inspections. And so if you're starting trying to just eat the whole elephant at once, you're never going to be successful. So if you can get folks just kind of inching their way along the path of understanding, the what's and whys and, the steps that they take for their specific role, then at least you've gotten a good start for kind of shaping the whole organization.
Yeah. Well, and I was having a conversation with a gentleman who leads the people and culture for his company out in California, which we know has a lot of regulation. And they have, they're an affordable housing provider. And he's been really focused on AI and how to use this in the sense of breaking down barriers of entry, right? So really making it easier for people to qualify and go through the process of qualifying for their apartment, where it's been so labor intensive, right? People have to jump through a lot of hoops, both on the operation side and the potential renter side. So, how are you seeing AI and technology helping, or are they helping yet?
They are helping, not as much as they could or should, I believe, in the affordable space. I think, it's a lot easier and it's just like, so I get it in terms, and that's where a lot more of the dollars are on the market rate side. But I think there are amazing AI tools, especially on the market rate side for communicating with applicants and residents. And because the process is so simple and there's so little legal recourse for some of the bigger consequences if you get something wrong, that it's gone, I think that's really great. I think where there's an opportunity, but I've seen it when it works well, work really well, is where AI can break down those complicated requirements from a certification standpoint
Mm.
and turn it into a communication or a conversation with an applicant. So, some of the front end Yardi, Rent Cafe, affordable tools at the base level of tax credit and HUD really do that. It's almost like, the TurboTax interface of just a little cartoon asking you questions about, do you have, any assets over 5,000, whatever. And it kind of, rather than the really, not great looking like tax almost form that you can hand people sometimes, being able to just have applicants have a conversation. And when you talk about barriers too, I mean, it's so much easier to have, your native language from your native browser and be
Mhm.
the one that's speaking with you, as opposed to all the challenges you may have at properties with language barriers and other things that can get in the way.
Yeah, that's a really good point, and one I hadn't even thought of as another nuance to this. And again, the drive to make it a simpler process. I'm excited about what, AI will do on the affordable side. I think there's so much opportunity. And yeah, there's also all the regulation and all of us still figuring it out. But I think that there's a lot of work to do and a lot of opportunity, obviously. I like
Hmm.
the interaction part too. I think you're right. I personally like that. And I'm going to make a lot of mistakes too when I'm filling out something without some coaching and guidance. So, yeah, having that partner and yeah, that's great. And we talk a lot about that. There's a lot of fear right now of AI and technology replacing people. And there's two sides of the coin that speak very loudly about this with no fear. One is, yes, we are looking to decrease, our people count, and the other is, no, we really understand that there will never be, you know, uh, the absence of the human touch needed in an interaction like this. So, what are you seeing in terms of that, and like how are organizations handling that question? Because it's a big one for people right now. It's like, wow, it's a scary thing. It's about that change management we're going to be talking about.
Yeah, I was, recently at the Affordable Leadership Summit at the RealPage headquarters in Texas, and that was one of the things we were talking about consistently because no matter what, and on the tech side or in what we do and any other, field of expertise, if you talk to folks that have been using AI to a great degree, you've got to keep the human in the loop is what they kept saying. You've got to have somebody to be able to verify that stuff. So I was in a meeting, I was working with a group where, a question came up in terms of which states have these, I think it was like wet signatures or something, to be able to do a lot more of this online. And so simultaneously, which I like to do sometimes, tried three different AIs asking this the exact same question around which states do we have to comply with this, et cetera. And I kind of knew the answer, or at least I knew if it was going to be wrong. All three gave me different answers, and they led you could follow the sources down to different places, and so you have to have the person there that knows at least the basic understanding of it and use it as a tool. Because then I was able to go, okay, this one is leading me to the correct spot of the state financing website. This one is going off of somebody's old website that says something that isn't necessarily helpful. So yeah, you can't just rely 100% on what the AI is giving you. You got to have an understanding of what's going on to be able to fact check to a great degree too.
Wow. Well, if anyone takes anything away from this podcast, that's a big one because I think you're absolutely right. If we rely on that information, just like you said, it could be highly inaccurate. And where there is a lot of liability or risk, that could be a huge mistake. So yeah, and the human touch to that and the human obviously intervention, if you will, and verification is necessary, especially in this. And so I have a question about the tech stack analysis because this is something I get asked a lot of from operators to focus on, and we get to that later. I think they want to talk about it first, and we usually find some other issues under the hood, if you will, that need to be dealt with first, like we were talking about people and process first. But then we get to the tech stack, and not lying, it is a stack.
Hmm.
32, 34, 50 technologies layering depending on how big the company is. And even small companies are trying things out and their subscription costs are through the roof. Um, where do you start when people say, hey, Kevin, can you come in and take a look at our tech stack and tell us where we have overlap and redundancy? Can you help us with that?
Yeah, you definitely have to start with your primary, property management system. So
Mm.
generally, I've implemented every one of the modules and every one of the aspects of RealPage and Yardi. So those are the two that I know the most. But that's where you start. So are they perfect in each of their modules and how they have it set up? In my opinion, no. But you want to have as few APIs and connections to it that you have to maintain and manage inputs and the information and updates and people having the knowledge of the different third party, softwares that you have as possible. So you kind of have to weigh that initially, which is, all right, this one has some more bells and whistles than the base of what RealPage you already have. But now I have to manage, those logins and, the information, the updates and the API in and out of it. And so is that worth it? Right. And so and are they going to be around to service it for as long as your primary partner is going to on the modules that they have? So that's where I would start. Now then you can go into a million different directions on, what you want to do. But the further you get away from the core property management interface that everyone is being trained on knowing and comfortable logging into every morning, then the more challenging things get.
Is it sometimes better to have maybe a substandard product that is consistent and people are utilizing versus something that may work, more efficiently or better and no one's using? I guess I answered my own question, but do you see
Right.
that? I mean, is that a real thing?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Yardi and RealPage are great. They just, there's things where there's going to be somebody innovating because they're small and they can move quickly and they don't have to, have as many lawyers as both of them like to remind me. Anytime I'm like, why can't we do this? Why can't we do that? They go, well, the lawyers have a say. It's like, oh, yeah, that makes sense. So, there's definitely a trade off there to where, that your folks are logging into that every morning. And so they understand how to navigate to some degree with RealPage and Yardi. And so every time you add another login, you're stretching and stressing people out because they now have to another tab, and hopefully you got to tie the single sign on, and then is it feeding into everybody's ability to have access when they start as a new employee, and are you managing and maintaining that? Who's training on it? Because all of that kind of stretches out to where if you're like, all right, hey, you're using the Aspire and Yardi or whatever you're using as your base training module, all that stuff is there, and so you can just keep directing people that one place. But if everyone you add, it's okay. Now you need to learn this, and now you need to go here, and now you need to, and now people are just gonna, lose the thread for sure.
Yeah, it seems too that with turnover and new people coming in, it could really become even more complex.
Yep. And the more, the velocity of properties that are changing hands from an ownership or a management standpoint, you can't. All right, well, here's the 17 different softwares we need you to learn to get started on day one. It's like okay. Whereas everybody's coming with you to some understanding of Yardi, RealPage, Appfolio, whatever. So
Yeah, I've and with my clients as well, just understanding what they already have, right? Like really digging in and figuring it out because a lot of the bigger players, right? The big drivers like RealPage and Yardi, they have a lot of different representation of the different modules, right? And so that one person, which is probably where you come in, to be able to navigate all of that is where I think I know I was frustrated as an operator with that. It's like, what do you mean you don't know what your other product is doing or who even to contact in that department? Like that seemed like a big disconnect to me. And it's been a minute since I've been in that seat. So do you still find that is a bit of an issue? Like there's got to be a champion of the tech stack. Or do you see that?
yeah, I think the first thing is, when you're frustrated, then this is when when I talk to clients or colleagues and stuff, you got to put it in one of three buckets and be able to make sure that's what it is. So first, is it a limitation of the software for sure? Because that's what everybody jumps to is it won't do this. And you gotta make sure because, like optimizing is the next biggest. Have you gone everywhere to optimize the software, worked with them to make sure that you are using it to the best of its abilities? And the biggest one is just settings. There are a lot of simple
Mhm.
settings where I was talking to somebody last week. There was an operator, and they were talking about their frustrations going from one to the other and back and forth. And they were talking about some real things that I know are a challenge with that software. I won't say which and what, but then they got to one like, no, that's a simple setting. I know exactly where that is. That's just a toggle. And this company had 20,000 units where they were basically making a major software switch decision because of something that really it was their late fees were charging if the HUD subsidy posted a day late. I'm like, you can adjust that pretty easily, right? But they were convinced that no, it was the system failure that caused all that. And I'm just like, no, that is a simple setting. So making sure that that you're getting to the root cause of what you're trying to do and making sure that it's not something the system can do.
That's a really, really good gift you just gave the crowd here. I think I can think of those instances off the top of my head where we just didn't know. what we were doing. And with some education and really having an expert come in and help us and guide us through that was super helpful.
Right.
Because a lot of times, you're not going to have the high tech knowledge, especially in our smaller operators. They're relying on these providers to really guide them through. And I know that's another disconnect that happens. The expectation, I think, of the larger players of, well, they're going to take care of it. I mean, we're paying a lot of
Right.
money, and they're going
Right.
to take care of it. But you have to be wary, right? Buyer beware. You need to be on top of this a bit.
Yeah, and you have to have the right people in the room too. So
Mm.
one of my biggest frustrations when it's the executive leadership is talking to the sales team of the software, and that is the worst combination. Unless you have the folks that are in the operating space on the ground, understand what you need to do to function on a day to day basis, and you have the people that are involved on the software side that know exactly the ins and outs of all of the settings and setups and the processes. Then you can start to make solve some of the problems, but if it's just, love them to death, but, on both sides, the executives and the sales folks, but they may not, they're not speaking the same language and none of them are. So you kind of need somebody in the middle to help translate, right? So, especially if you're doing a maintenance module, man, what the maintenance folks need and what a software developer's language is could not be, further from each other. And so you have to be able to tie those things together to make it function and make sure that, what they're stuck on is not just a simple fix that or before you roll it out, making sure the simple fixes are taken care of before it causes major havoc too.
Well, and what a great service that you provide in that way because, again, there weren't very many people that did that when I was operating. You relied heavily on either your IT guy, poor IT guy,
Right.
or the service provider. And sometimes, while they're experts, they have some one size fits all applications that don't take into consideration some of the nuances
Right.
of individual businesses.
Right.
So yeah, yeah, for sure. So another thing that we've touched on a little bit, just kind of switching gears a tad, but it's really about complexity into execution. This is something I see businesses struggle with all the time. They may be able to get the right people in the right seats. They may be able to get, the processes aligned and even their technology where it needs to be, and yet they fail to execute. From your perspective, why do you think that is? I mean, what stops people from executing um, religiously or again reliably? I guess is the word.
Yeah, having those clear lines of communication and feedback loops to be able to hear what's going on, what's going wrong, be able to move quickly when you hear something that's not working. But like we said at the top, having a clear expectation, clear communication, clear this is the framework with which we're working in. And then, those things can all kind of flow through it as long as you, like I said, keep those lines of communications really clear about who does what are the swim lanes, what are the responsibilities, and then, what is the expectation and the vision and get that out so that whatever the new thing is that you're trying to execute on, it fits right into that streamline of, okay, we know who's the one that's communicating, who am I looking to for answers, how do I get, information back when something breaks, and having that system and framework set up before you start throwing everything into the stream is critical.
Well, it's a nice segue into the big topic. I told you before we went live that I was recently at a conference where that's all we were talking about was change management, and we were giggling a little bit because that is a term that I haven't heard. Like we've used other things for it, but it's come back. It's come back. Change management's a popular term again, and it's sort of a one size fits all, catch all term. How are you seeing it as a challenge or an opportunity? How's it showing up with your clients and the people that you're dealing with on the day to day?
Yeah, it's a major challenge. Yeah, it always has been and always will be. And I think, different organizations have a harder time with it than others. And so, and especially in the affordable world, hate to say it, but, HUD doesn't change at the speed of light, right? RD doesn't change at the speed of light. And so, folks that kind of are attracted to that world don't want change at the speed of light. So being able to manage those expectations. So whatever we're trying to roll out, it's going to be a challenge, and you've got to make sure that you've got a game plan prepped out ahead of time for what is the pacing going to be, right? So, what are the groups going to be? Be careful in who you select and how, and it depends on the product too. So, because you want the early adopters in there, obviously in the first groups, to be able to kind of be your champions as you go along. But you also want some of the vocal, just period, and then some of the vocal curmudgeons that are not going to love it, to be able to try and win them over as part of the process too. But it depends on the product. So, if it's a compliance based one, or it's a maintenance based one, or if it's a marketing based one, you also have to keep in mind, having all the right people at the table, and then, having those ways of communicating to each department is
Mm.
very different. So, sending a big text book out to the maintenance teams is not going to be great. The compliance folks might love that, right? The marketing folks, they're going to want, a different way of presenting this and getting people excited. And so you've got to be aware of, it can't just be one size fits all for the way you roll each one of them out either.
Yeah. Wow. That was insightful. And I think what you said at the beginning of that was just really making sure, this was a couple of questions ago, about having the right people in the room. I also counsel people on getting your naysayers in there, because they are the ones that will tell you what they think. Even if it might not be all the way true, it is very much, you need that feedback and that voice in the room. So those are really, I think, powerful suggestions and appreciated. Um, you know, do you find that you approach assisting companies differently or the same if they're really big versus really small?
Very differently. And I think it depends on everything from the type of product they have, how dispersed they are, what is their function or dysfunction in terms of their corporate leadership and how they communicate in the different departments, or strengths. Every company has decided to invest in different things, whether it's, just a huge back office support for the property management software, or they're a light touch there, but they're, heavy on the IT because their infrastructure is more important for development. It all depends on the shape of the organization too. So there's definitely no one size fits all at all. You really have to listen to both the folks that are telling you what needs to be accomplished, and then getting as many people to get a sense of, all right, because there's always a reason why there's challenges there, and they're maybe bringing somebody in if there's been a failed rollout in the past, if there's people that are burnt out on change, if there is changing staff and leadership all the time. All those are dynamics that go into how you want to approach solving that problem, because it could be completely different just based on
Yeah.
anything.
Well, and you've done a lot, and thank you for that. You've done a lot in just transforming companies with speed, where you've been able to, duplicate efforts quickly, and speed in terms of growth and getting tech in appropriately across an organization, across distance, geographically. You've mentioned some of the things on how you do that with people and process, and obviously having the right people in the room, and communication lines. What else have you done to really manifest that? Because that is hard to do, both in affordable and market rate.
Relationships, especially in the industry and across
Mm.
those different major key players in the organizations, because when you go into a space, you kind of have a ready playbook, at least, of knowing, within this organization, who is the best to talk to for these different things, right? Or who is the expert in this field, or who is and other consultants too that I've worked with, and can refer to, that, oh, this is the person that really has an expertise in this aspect of what you're trying to do. But when you get to know, like you said, navigating those, especially the property management systems, to where there's the sales folks, and then there's the, problem solving folks, and there's the, whether it be compliance or marketing, who are the experts in their different teams, being able to have those folks on the, we say Rolodex, I guess, in the digital phone book, is a key factor, because, to go at speed, you've got to, not shortcuts, but essentially say, hey, copy paste that system and that agreement that we had on the last go around, or this set of product specs, or this set of flooring standards, whatever. Because if you can at least use some of that is inherent knowledge of the relationship you have with those vendors, then they're like, oh, just like I said, where saying the exact same thing to your team over and over and over again makes it easier, because everybody's like, no, here's what he's going to say. Same thing with the vendors. You get there and it's like, all right, you want, almost like going to the, burger, McDonald's. It's, you want your regular? Yes, the regular. I want this setup, we want these things. Here's a couple of tweaks that I think this organization needs other than what, we did over here or there. But having that shared language with the vendors is also key because, if you've been there and done that with them and you have built that trust of, I'm going to deliver on what, I say, and I know I can vouch for them and say they're going to deliver on what they say. Those relationships are super important.
Oh yeah, I totally agree with you. And we forget, I think, sometimes about that particular relationship. We're working internally and not thinking about so much in that way how we can use systems and duplicative process to really maximize and leverage those relationships. It makes it easier too on both sides of the game, right? So yeah, I love it. And I could think of probably an advantage of procurement and cost, which
Yeah.
is
For you,
also
I was on a call last week where it was working with somebody that I hadn't worked with, but it's somebody I very much trust, worked with in the industry for 20 years. We, text answers and questions all the time. And they referred him over and they kept asking the questions, well, do you want this and this in the contract? And I was like, whatever, call him Fred, whatever works for Fred works for me. So let's just let's just go, let's get to the end point. Cause if they're doing it that way, I trust them. It works for them. Let's just copy that, and skip to the end
yeah,
of here of this.
yeah. It's good. Fred. Good old
Yeah.
Fred. Yeah.
Yeah.
You gotta love it. I cannot believe that we are actually at the end of our time together because I could talk to you for another hour or so. And we should probably get together again because I can think
Absolutely.
of some other avenues we could go down. But in talking to our leaders out there, which is a lot of our audience, people that are struggling with the very things that we're talking about getting systems and processes in, about making sure that we have the right people in the right seats, and people that are considering like their career paths even in this new world. What would be your piece of advice? Because you've been on a very successful journey. What would your piece of advice be for people to be thinking about as they are navigating our new world?
Well, the people still matter. So, getting to know your team and getting to know how they operate, what motivates them, excites them. Because no matter what you're trying to do, you have to have folks that feel like they're a part of something, that you care about them, that, that they're being heard. And all of that is key, even from a selfish standpoint. To get things done and execute, you've got to have folks that are, ready to be positive and communicate with each other and with you. And it's also a benefit that it's nice to just work with people you like and have positive communication, but it also is really effective in getting things done.
Yeah, it sure is. Yeah, that culture. Again, I think whole other topic. Uh,
Hmm.
yeah, but I just want to thank you so much, Kevin. This has been a really important and impactful conversation. And if people are interested in reaching out and talking to you more about what you do and perhaps getting some help, because I think there's a lot of people out there who need
Yeah.
this. How do they find you? How would they get a hold of you?
Just on my LinkedIn. So Kevin A. Weishaar, it's Weishaar Strategic Partners is the company, but you'll be able to find me there. I had to add the initial. I found out there's another Kevin who's a lounge singer from 20 years ago that was online. So I was told you got to add the
Not you?
initial. So, no, it's not me. No. Very, very handsome guy, but not me. So I've been told I have to add the A in there to differentiate. So it's funny.
Oh, that's really good. I'm sorry, I have one more question. You have some
Yeah.
great artwork behind you on your
Oh,
wall, and it's down lower towards the, is that your kids? Is that your kids' artwork over
yeah.
on the wall?
Over
Oh,
there. Yeah. Yeah. That's all
yeah,
kids artwork. So
that's
yeah,
awesome.
somewhere to hang it up. So yep. Got it all there as a little reminder. So it's nice.
Maybe your why?
Yeah. Yep. You got it.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's awesome. Well, thanks again, Kevin, and, yeah, we'll talk soon.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Thanks for tuning in to Multifamily Elevated, where we hope that you are inspired and ready to go, elevated to take on your next challenge in multifamily. So if you liked this episode, please subscribe, like, comment, and of course, share with your network. And don't forget that this was brought to you by the Multifamily Media Network, that is also sharing the latest and greatest in trends, ideas, and content across our multifamily space. Until next time, keep elevating, and we'll talk soon.